Hey everyone, this is acyuta-bhava from Nightlight Astrology. Happy Monday, everybody. Today we are going to take a look at Venus's upcoming square with the planet Uranus, which isn't perfecting until the 19th, but is warming up this week and probably is the transit of the week to be talked about. So I think we're going to talk about it today and then revisit it again at the end of the week, maybe do sort of two different takes. Today, I think we're going to continue in the style that I presented last week, which is I made a list of all of the most consistent themes and patterns that I have seen from clients over the years and students. I guess all of my experiences combined, but a lot of these come from my client work with regard to Uranus-Venus transits. So in other words, when Uranus is transiting natal Venus in the birth chart, usually it's going to be a slower moving transit like that shows up in a natal charts reading. When Uranus is transiting Venus in someone's birth chart, what kinds of things typically show up, which are not, it's very similar to what you're going to see potentially in a shorter window of time this week when Venus passes through the square to Uranus from Aquarius to Taurus. So let me put up the real-time clock and give you a look at it first, and then I'm going to walk you through some of the themes. I also want to mention that at the end of this month, I usually don't do a very good job of advertising this. So I just want to point you all to it right now. Excuse me, at the end of this month, if you go to my website, nightlightastrology.com, and click on the events page and go to the speaker series, you will find the new lineup of spring speakers. Once a season, I host 3 speakers. It's totally free. You can register on the website and get a link. We have 3 speakers. Martine Hermes is talking about aspects in astrology from the ancient Hellenistic perspective. Ren Butler will be with us talking about archetypal astrology on March 26th. And Jen Zart, one of my friends and colleagues, will be with us talking about astrology and gemstones. So really cool series. It's all free. Check it out on my website, nightlightastrology.com. Go to the events page. The other quick announcement that I want to mention is that once April hits, I'm into promotional mode for my upcoming spring classes, which start in June. For the first week of April, because so many people have asked, I will, for 1 week only, I'll run the same prices that I offered through the Kickstarter for my spring courses. I will offer again just for 1 week. Quite a few people have said, hey, I didn't have the money at the time or really wanted to take advantage of that. Could I still have that rate? And rather than making an exception to like a bunch of individual people, we just decided to open it up for that first week of April, so that if you want to use the early bird, there'll be like an extra early bird rate for 1 week. And more about that toward the beginning of April. But just so that you guys know, that'll be a 1 week special that we run at the beginning of April. That'll be for all of my 22 programs, whether it's my advanced programs or my new year 1 program that starts in June. Okay, let's put up the real-time clock and take a look at this. So here you can see that Venus is at about 7 degrees of Aquarius right now and moving toward Uranus by the end of this week. If we advance the clock a little bit, you're going to see that the engagement within 3 degrees really begins Tuesday into Wednesday, and then the engagement really heats up, and by Saturday, the square is perfecting. What's interesting about this square is that it has the potential to be acting as something of a breakup of Venus's enclosure between the malefics. We'll see how that works. It's also the case that most ancient astrologers would say that Venus isn't really enclosed until she's within 3 degrees of the malefics, or 7 degrees of the malefics on either side, which technically does not happen for, up until about March 20th. And then you would technically have the enclosure all the way from March 20th to about the 28th. It's like a 1 week stretch where things could get a little dicey. But we are going to look today at some of the top themes that I have seen from Venus-Uranus over the years in no particular order. I hope that you'll enjoy this. I feel like I'm laughing because, Venus-Uranus is one of the most colorful transits, I think, out there. And it's really difficult as an astrologer to predict exactly how it will show up. For example, let's say that I have someone who's married and they're going to get this Venus-Uranus transit and they say, well, they know a little bit about astrology and they say, oh my God, you know, is my marriage going to break up? And it's like, well, there's a real possibility. Yeah, because one of the things that happens is the sudden urge, number one on my list, not because it's necessarily the top one, but it is probably up there, but it's the sudden urge for freedom in relationships. People just naturally, Venus, Uranus naturally seeks freedom of, let's call it freedom of expression romantically. So if you're bored in a relationship, it is not uncommon to see affairs under Venus Uranus. Venus Uranus can show up and it can be the surprising, shocking transgression of boundaries or vows or whatever in a relationship. That's Venus Uranus. And so if a client asks me, will my relationship break apart during this Venus Uranus dynamic or in my birth chart, Uranus transiting Venus? Yeah, there's a possibility. You know, it depends. How's the health of your relationship? The other thing that's true about this transit is that sometimes relationships, you know, being in a relationship with my wife now for 11 years, and I'm sure all of you out there can agree with this, regardless of how long you've been together with someone, you go through periods of time where there's breakthroughs. There are serious moments of like, we're stuck in the relationship, we need to level up somehow, and then boom, there's some kind of breakthrough and you evolve as a couple. You have to rekindle the spark sometimes, or sometimes you go through a period where, you know, your relationship is tested somehow and then it rapidly evolves like, you know, like a snake sloughing off its skin. So Venus Uranus could mean, yeah, you know, you're going to seek something new and you're going to seek freedom. And that might mean a relationship falling apart, or suddenly it could mean that this very same relationship breaks open and evolves. So it's not a simple black or white issue. It's not a simple black or white matter when Venus and Uranus get together as to whether a relationship will hold up. So that's part one, is the sudden urge for freedom in relationships or breakthroughs in relationships. I have them as two separate items on my list, but they're sort of a pair, and you can never, it's really hard to say. Here's the thing. Most of the time, the giveaway as to how Venus Uranus will express itself has to do with taking the pulse of the relationship. You know, you can feel, you know, as the relationship, most of the time it's not out of the blue suddenly that the relationship breaks apart with Venus Uranus with no prior warnings or signs of distress. Okay. Sometimes it is totally random. It'll still be sort of random and unexpected that something serves to break a relationship apart with Uranus, Venus, but it's not that the relationship itself hasn't given you signs. So I always tell people with Venus Uranus, you know, if you feel like the relation, there's these fault lines in the relationship, just don't leave them unaddressed, because this is the kind of transit that will can give little earthquakes in relationships, especially if you're avoiding or neglecting those pressure points or fault lines or whatever we want to call them. Another wonderful way that Venus and Uranus have of expressing themselves is in terms of that which is strange but beautiful. So when it comes to our aesthetic, it could be a clothing choice. It could be, you know, the decor in your bedroom, or maybe it has something to do with maybe you buy a used car that has a strange color you would never normally buy. You'll find that the need for artistic or aesthetic revolution can be really strong. Sometimes that includes people having body work done, or getting a tattoo, or suddenly deciding to have some plastic surgery, or, you know, anything that has to do with an interesting or innovative take on beauty, non-normal, or some kind of exploratory, is that a word? I think so. Or experimental. So experimentation and beauty, spontaneity and strange beauty, anything that breaks the mold or that seeks sudden and rapid change around an aesthetic or something's appearance. You know, if you think about also anything that's alluring or intoxicating in the realm of beauty or desire, but is also sort of strange or even mysterious, Venus, Uranus. If you think about the obsession with youthfulness, like Venus, Uranus can be very much like the never-ending search for the eternal youth, the fountain of eternal youth. I still have to figure out why my camera sometimes just goes blurry, and then I have to like bring it back. I think it's because I'm moving somehow and it has this autofocus thing. Anyone knows anything about cameras and has any advice, let me know. So the obsession with youth, though, whether it's like, okay, I've got a new cream, or I'm going to a spa to try an experimental skin treatment or something like that, this would be Venus, Uranus. And I'm not trying to make fun of it at all. Like, I think if it gets to a point where we are offended by aging, or we're offended by growing old, then there's something quite wrong, because aging is beautiful in its own way. The obsessiveness with staying young or looking young, never growing old, freezing, even something like, whatever, these like a cryogenic, let me freeze myself when I die so that I can be reborn later when the technology is there. Want to stay young forever, this kind of thing in general. And the truth is that there's a little bit of a Frankenstein aspect to Venus, Uranus, where the alterations we make to ourselves sometimes make us into monsters. The strange beauty can be almost like deformed in the name of beauty or something like that. So beauty in the cult of youthfulness, falling in love again. Maybe you've been single for a long time and suddenly you're possessed by a romantic impulse. That would be very Venus, Uranus. Love affairs, I already mentioned as a very Venus, Uranus dynamic. One thing that I think is important to mention is there's this one weird pattern that's like more destructive and kind of darker than the rest with Venus, Uranus that I've noticed over time. And it's the urge or impulse to destroy or desecrate things that are beautiful or sacred or clean, to make them dirty, to spray paint something, with nasty, hateful words, or anything that would defile, degrade, desecrate something that is beautiful or clean, whether it's like, oh, I'm going to desecrate a beautiful area in a park, or someone's going to defiantly spray paint over a nice art mural on a wall in a downtown area somewhere. Now, don't get me wrong. I know that actually, sometimes people doing mural work and spray paint work is totally beautiful. So I'm not, you get what I'm saying. Some act of like, let me deface something. The urge to take something Venusian and make some kind of defiant statement over the top of it, or to take something that's clean and to act out in that space. I remember when I was a kid, there was a phase that I went through. It was a very short phase. I think I must have been about 13 or 14 years old. And, we would like look for people's houses, like teacher, oh, here's a nice house. And we would throw eggs at the windows. We called it egging someone's house. Terrible thing to do, right? It's very Venus, Uranus, if I think about it, Interestingly, there was some Venus, Uranus aspects right around that age, and I've always taken note of that. So I don't know if you guys ever got into that kind of stuff. Hopefully you didn't. And I certainly don't want to glorify vandalizing people's property, but anytime there's an impulse to be rebellious in the presence of something clean or beautiful, that can be this weird Venus, Uranus, this expression of Venus, Uranus. Ren Butler, in his book, The Archetypal Universe, which, by the way, again, you can see Ren give a talk in my speaker series at the end of this month, he mentions the transformation of Cinderella from sort of this stepchild who is, if I remember correctly, the story, who is, covered in ashes because she's cinders, because she's cleaning all the time, and she goes to the ball and she has this total transformation. So if you think of a metamorphosis of a Venusian character, it's kind of rebirthing or renaissance of Venus. Ren Butler mentions that in his book. That's a really great one. Non-normal, or I will call them, I should say, maybe non-status quo expressions of beauty or sexuality. So any kind of sexual orientation, whether it's someone who maybe someone's coming out of the closet. I've seen many of my clients over the years, break the news to family members, come out publicly, under a Uranus-Venus dynamic. And so it's liberating, but also sometimes, there's pain, and there's the transformation is shocking or jolting, and sometimes even traumatizing, when there's expressing your sexuality more openly than you have in the past or something like that. But any kind of going against the grain in terms of sexuality, sexual identity, by heteronormative, by that I mean, by status quo I mean probably just like heterosexual, anything that would be even someone just saying, look, I want to be in an open relationship or something like that. Uranus Venus. There's also just a general streak of fun and freedom, spontaneity versus things that are planned, and the seeking of unusual or interesting forms of pleasure. These kinds of energies are very common. Let's make some crazy, like yesterday, my girls were making some crazy fort out of pillows and boxes, and they had this crazy game that it was, just really bizarre. And I just thought, oh, there's Venus Uranus coming in the air. Things always get so creative. And it wasn't so much, I mean, every kid makes forts, I guess, but it was the game they were playing. There was this whole story that they created, and it was very provocative. And like I was like, oh, that's weird. They're like a little off the deep end right now, but that's good. I'm happy for them. So you get that kind of energy, fun, freedom, exploration around what constitutes pleasure, or spontaneity versus things that are planned or habitual, breaking the mold. Similarly, there is the attraction to the wild child. It's like, oh, great. I just hope my, like as a parent, I'm like, I'm, dear God, let my daughters not have a Uranus Venus transit when they're in high school and get attracted to, the person who drives their car 90 miles an hour, So any time there's an attraction to what is dangerous, off the beaten track, unplanned, whatever, that attraction to what is wild, different, strange, provocative, in a person. We all have had times where it's like a gravitational pull to someone who is fun. And oftentimes there's like a really intense sexual chemistry, but wow, is it not a good idea? That can be very Venus Uranus as well. I'd also say that there's something about flaunting. Okay, so and you guys know this too, there's probably a phase that you've all gone through. I can think I probably went through something like this, and I certainly remember this being a part of my high school experience, that when you're trying to find your own voice, your own style, that sometimes you go through phases where you're also flaunting yourself. There's like, look at me, look at how different I am. And sometimes this is also, that could be positive, but maybe it's a little bit of a shadow of Venus Uranus, is the need to be so different that you become provocative, you become a bit of the rebel without a cause, you become someone who is trying to draw attention to themselves purely by virtue of trying to look or be different, someone who is compulsively attracted to that which is rebellious or different, and there's like a chip on the shoulder that's not so healthy. So you have to watch for some of those shadow sides as well. So as we prepare for Venus and Uranus this week, I would love to hear your stories. Venus Uranus is coming through by Saturday, but you're going to see this build as the week goes on. So good to stay aware of it here at the outset of the week, especially since I think it is the transit of the week. Mercury is moving into a sextile with Uranus this week. I think that's interesting too, a little Uranian energy in the air, especially since Mercury is also in the sign of Venus's exaltation. We'll see how it all unfolds. You tell me your stories in the chat box. Use the hashtag grab, put Venus Uranus if you'd like to, if that's the one. Tell us a story. Otherwise, if you feel like emailing, it's grabbed@nightlightastrology.com. Remember, we don't respond to those emails. We just aggregate them and then share your stories later. Can't wait to see what comes in this week. I feel like Venus Uranus always brings us some pretty fun stories. So that is it for today. I hope you guys are off to a great start of your week. I look forward to more soon. Don't forget the speaker series. You can check it out on my website, nightlightastrology.com. We'll be running a sale the first week of April for my spring courses, both the advanced courses and the upcoming year 1 course. So stay tuned for that as well. All right, that's what I've got for today. Take it easy, everyone. Bye.